The UK will help fund a migrant detention centre in France. That's part of $570 million in new funding agreed by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and French President Emmanuel Macron at their first summit in 5 years. The two leaders held talks to try and iron out differences over migration and deepen ties after years of post-Brexit disputes.
Emmanuel and I share the same belief. Criminal gangs should not get to decide who comes to our countries. Within weeks of my coming into office, we agreed our largest ever small boats deal. And today we've taken our cooperation to an unprecedented level to tackle this shared challenge. We're announcing a new detention centre in northern France, a new command centre bringing our enforcement teams together in one place for the first time, and an extra 500 new officers patrolling French beaches.
Well, let's talk to our correspondent Ross Cullen, who's in Paris. So, Ross, migration, a big part of today's agenda.
Yeah, hi, Robin. It really was a big part of today's agenda, one of the top items for the discussions by Rishi Sunak and Emmanuel Macron in the Elysee Palace. You can see the French presidential office and residence behind me. They wanted to discuss the UK's proposed legislation. I'm sure there was some interpretation of that by Rishi Sunak for Emmanuel Macron, explaining the new proposed bill focusing on illegal immigration in the UK. Rishi Sunak was saying that that is actually legislation which will benefit both sides of the channel, with that new nearly $600 million cash injection by London to Paris to fund France building a new detention centre here. Also an increased number of police officers patrolling the beaches of northern France from where the boats headed for the United Kingdom leave. Also increased surveillance, the use of drones. Emmanuel Macron saying that this is a reinforcing of new initiatives, a reinforcing of our fight against illegal immigration, and also hailing the new funding initiatives. Of course, he was referencing the funding cash from London to Paris to help France build that detention centre.
And also, this summit also a chance for a reset to the Britain-France relationship after what's been a tough few years.
Yeah, really tough few years since the Brexit vote in 2016, then the AUKUS crisis in 2021 when Australia abruptly cancelled a submarine deal with France, going behind France's back, according to the French Foreign Ministry, to sign a new deal instead with the UK and with the US. And there'll be a summit next week of those three countries focusing on that submarine deal. But France and the UK have managed to overcome those difficulties. And Emmanuel Macron, the French president, the host of this summit here on Friday, was hailing that new relationship.
Today, this summit is indeed exceptional. It's a moment, clearly, I would say, of reunion, of reconnection, and of a new beginning. It marks a shared will to speak to one another, to better coordinate and build together new prospects in this context. And I believe that the will that you clearly expressed and that we discussed jointly together, and what our governments have worked on, what we managed to create.
It's hard to overstate just how bad the relationship had got, Robin, between Britain and France, but it's also important to underline today the brotherly embraces, the real feeling of warmth. There was a real change in tone now between the leadership in the United Kingdom and France. You might remember in 2022, the former British Prime Minister Liz Truss said, when she was asked if Emmanuel Macron was a friend or foe, she said the jury's out. Well, today, the current British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, looked to Emmanuel Macron during their closing news conference and said, "I am fortunate to be working and serving alongside you, and I am incredibly excited about the future."
Ross, thank you very much. Our correspondent Ross Cullen in Paris.